Before I give my written presentation that will be on the record, if anyone wants to come into the council office, they get a copy. I have some copies here. I want to preface my remarks by saying, as I was driving in today, it occurred to me how many qualified nominees for a judgeship who happen to be gay will not apply, would not risk. And some years back, as a governor's counselor, and I meet with all the nominees, I met with a judicial nominee, and I asked him, why did you wait so long to apply? You could have been on the bench 20 years, and you're not even going to be on 10 years now. And he said, I was afraid. And I think that's what this is about today. Past practice, I ignore newspaper reports, but in this particular case, it is important to first put this in my statement, what I actually said at Judge Ling's hearing. What was printed was misleading innuendo in Marjorie Egan's column following the hearing. There is no way to take back those words printed or explained to the reader. It was only a few words, but it was so detrimental. I will quote verbatim from the article. Quote, detractors spoke mostly about sex. Councilor Marilyn Devaney spoke of penile vaginal penetration. That's the end of the quote. That was it. No explanation for using such words. How embarrassing to me, my children, my grandchildren. Who would talk like this? Ms. Egan neglected to say I was reading the exact words from an incest rule from an appeals court panel. I have never used those words in my life. I would have given her the copy of the rule had she spoken to me. Of course I knew Judge Ling was not in favor of incest, but it was important to have her opinion and explanation. It was concerning an incest rule, which since has been overturned. The SJC initially made this rule, that only penile vaginal penetration, for example, brothers raping a sister, would be a crime of incest. But for example, a father raping a son would not be a crime of an act of incest, as it could not result in pregnancy or an abnormal child. I will continue to ask the questions that need to be answered, regardless of a nominee's color, creed, or orientation. If I asked Justice Island the same question, would it be taken out of context? I am not responsible for the public who spoke at that hearing. I don't know them. If I was presiding, I would have gaveled out of order speakers who used demeaning and inappropriate language. I met with Judge Ling for 3.5 hours previously to the hearing. After the hearing this week, I still had some unresolved questions, so we had a 2-hour meeting. I had 2 concerns. Number 1, the incest rule, which has now been changed to include both heterosexual and same-sex individuals. Judge Ling clearly clarified her position for me with the statutes in the rule that applied. She did not condone same-sex incest. Number 2 concern regarding a conflict of interest. Judge Ling's spouse had appeared with clients before the appeals court for the Public Defender Division between 2001 and 2010. Her job was to appear before the appeals court. Judge Ling discussed this situation with the then Chief Justice of the Appeals Court, Armstrong, who had also been the chairman of the SJC Committee on Judicial Ethics during the first 10 years of its existence. Judge Ling advised the clerk who assigns cases that she would recuse herself from all Public Defender Division Appeals Union cases, those of her former law firm, and law clerks who had worked for her. Judge Armstrong's opinion was that if Judge Ling disclosed that her spouse was appearing with clients before the judges of the appeal court, the judges would be subject to recusal, and no judge would be able to hear the cases. No judge or anyone working in the court knew Judge Link's spouse. Judge Link assured me that she and her spouse had never met, never attended any party or gathering with any of the judges. I state here that I have had my concerns and questions resolved to my satisfaction. The first time I met with Judge Link, I told her I did not like the caption, first openly gay judge on the SJC, any more than I would want to be the first widow on the Governor's Council. It further stated, that does not define us or the job that we do. In researching Judge Link, I found that she had a legal record without bias, no challenge of her conduct. She does not legislate and has the highest ethics. Judge Link was not born with a silver spoon in her mouth. She was an only child. Her father died when she was 16. Her mother, with an 8th grade graduation, education, at the age of 56, got a job in a factory to support her daughter Barbara and herself. Judge Link's mother remained in Queens, New York, while Judge Link went to Harvard Law School. Judge Link knows firsthand about crime, as her mother was a victim of a home invasion, tied in a chair with a wire by her intruders. Judge Link also lived in a tough neighborhood in Dorchester for 14 years. I have talked with over 20 people. I have researched this for over 2 weeks. I have talked with clerks and staff who work for her. They cannot say enough about how wonderful she is, talked about her thoughtfulness, how intelligent she is. I learned this was true of the opinion of those working in the court, be it a custodian or a clerk alike. I have found Judge Link to be most brilliant, Fordham, Yale, Harvard Law School, PhD. I also found her to be a caring person with a good sense of humor. She meets the criteria: honest, highly qualified, unbiased and fair, with a proper temperament and demeanor. I will be voting yes for Judge Link as Associate Justice of the Supreme Judicial Court. Thank you for letting me get through all of this. Thank you.
Councilor Cipollini.
We cannot have the state usurp the rights of parents. Let me repeat. We cannot have the state usurp the rights of parents. Parents are legally responsible for their children until the children reach the age of 18. The state should have no right to force students' attendance in sex education classes without the parents' written permission. This should be on an opt-in basis, not an opt-out one. We cannot place another liberal-minded judge on the SJC, the Supreme Judicial Court, to rule otherwise. Governor, shut down that site. Shut down mariatalks.com. It shows our children how to get an abortion without their parents' awareness. We cannot place another liberal-minded judge on the SJC, the Supreme Judicial Court, to rule otherwise. The way to make law is by means of the legislature or by means of initiative petition. We cannot place another liberal-minded judge on the SJC to rule otherwise or legislate from the bench. Laws should be interpreted according to their original intent. The ruling of the nominee in regard to incest left every child vulnerable. We cannot elevate this nominee or show such poor judgment to a position in the state's highest court. In the best interests of the people of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, this nominee should be rejected. After my careful review of Justice Link's answers, which he gave at the public hearing, my conclusion is that constitutional government will continue to be compromised if she were to be promoted to an Associate Justice of the Supreme Judicial Court. I hope that my fellow associate counselors have concluded likewise. My opposition is based entirely upon the nominee being irresponsible and failing to take notice of constitutional limits.
Counsel Casey.
I want to begin by thanking Judge Link for her candid testimony at the hearing, for her professionalism, and her stoic presentation in the light of some very unprofessional and irrelevant questioning. I rise because I want to set the basis for my vote and distinguish myself from those irrelevant and ignorant questions. I found Judge Link's responses to questions about the Second Amendment and the rights of the people of Massachusetts to bear arms to be at odds with the United States Supreme Court decisions in the McDonald and the Heller cases. I was troubled by her comments and answers about selective incorporation of certain parts of the Bill of Rights. It is my opinion that the people have the right to demand that the Massachusetts Supreme Court justices respect and apply our hard-earned constitutional rights. I was also concerned by Judge Link's own comments and words used in her judicial application and her testimony at the hearing, that she believes appointed judges should, quote, develop the law, not the elected members of the legislature who are directly accountable to the people. And due to her responses and her own words at her hearing, I am unable to support her nomination. Thank you.
Roll call.
Councilor Cipollini.
No.
Councilor Tremblay.
Yes.
Councilor Devaney.
Yes.
Councilor Ainella.
Yes.
Councilor Manning.
No.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Casey.
No.
Councilor Merriman.
Yes.